Counting data. We've seen a few examples of functions in an earlier lesson, but there are quite a few more that can help us look at our data. So far, the only way we've been able to see the number of rows is by counting the rows that appear, or looking at the display in SQL Server Management Studio. For example, in our customer table, we know that there are 8 rows because we can see the last row here is number 8. What if we wanted to return the actual number of rows from our query? We can use a function called count. The count function will return the number of non-null values found by our query. It's an aggregate function, which means it can combine or aggregate multiple rows into one row. For example, let's say we wanted to count the number of rows in the customer table. We would write count, open brackets, then we can type star, which means count the entire row, and then close brackets. We can run the query and see that we have the result of 8. We have one row here, and the value of that row is 8. It doesn't show us 8 separate rows. It shows us one value. What if we want to use the where clause? We can do that in SQL. We can count the number of rows where the order credit is not null. We click execute and we can see that there are 7 rows where the order credit is not null. This excludes the value where that order credit is null. Or we can count the number of rows where the order credit is greater than 50. We have 3 rows here. What if we want to count a particular column? We can count the values inside a column by specifying the column name instead of a star character. We've counted 8 rows here. What about the last name column? We count that and get a value of 7. Why is that the case? Why do we have one less last name? This is because the count function excludes null values. If we select from customer, we can see there is one row with a null last name. This is excluded from the count function. So what if there are no matches found by your count function? Let's count all the records where the order credit is greater than 1000. And we know by looking at the data that there are no records that match that criteria. We run the query and we get a result of 0. So it doesn't show an error, even if no records or no results are found that match the where clause. It just shows a count of 0. So that's how you can use count. One thing to notice is that count and other aggregate functions always return a value even if that count is 0.